It felt like I kind of turned pro. This is different. This is like alcohol was our emotional currency. You know you've drank too much. You know you should stop. And you're staring at the bottle of vodka. And there's maybe a quarter or a third of the bottle left. And you're looking at it and you know you shouldn't do it. And you just say F it and you finish the bottle. It's like a passive suicide.
Welcome to Veteran Voices SITREP with your hosts, Tom and Chris Faust.
Welcome to Veteran Voices. I am your co-host, Tom Faust. I'm here with my son, Chris. And today we have with us Dr. Dice, and he is a former Navy SEAL, firefighter paramedic, therapist, co-founder of Bishop and Dice Defense. And today we're going to be talking about recovery, resilience, and the unique challenges that veterans face, and also first responders face when they're coming home. And then anything else that we come across and decide to talk about. So welcome, Dr. Dice.
Thank you, Tom. Chris, honor to be here, man. Thank you for providing a platform that we can get this word out. You know, that I sound really good on paper, but there is a much darker tale behind the scenes, let me tell you.
There's darker tales behind most scenes of help and support and paths that you go down.
Indeed, there is.
Right.
Well, why don't we start off? Just give us a little bit of your background, what got you into the military in the first place, and then we can get to your transition.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, like you mentioned for me, fire department, paramedic. And I was getting ready. I was taking all my classes to go into law enforcement. At that time in my life, I was all about go, go, go. Let's be the hero. And my chief pulls me up, and before I was able to put in my paperwork transferring, goes, what are you doing? You just jumping around. You gotta find some roots. And I said, I'm just trying to be all I can be. And I asked him, what's the top of the food chain? He said a Navy SEAL. And that was my entire decision making matrix was like, okay, I'll do that. Went down to the recruiter, signed up in the late enlistment program, and boom. I think my first day in the Navy was April Fool's Day, 1996. Yep. Mm-hmm. So it was the beginning of my Navy career, and I went through BUDS, the SEAL teams. The one thing that struck me about the Navy, and like there was drinking involved in the fire department and the ambulance, but when I got in the Navy, it felt like I kind of turned pro. It was like, this is different. This is like almost like alcohol was our emotional currency. You're having a bad day, boom. Hey, let's down. You guys are having a problem. You want to go to fisticuffs? You two get a drink. Sort this out. You have a fallen comrade. Hey, I got a bottle. We're going to get through this together. I mean, when you got indoctrinated, you got elevated, and you got separated. Alcohol was how we dealt with everything. And right off the bat, I loved that kind of, like, I had a flask always on me. And if you were having a bad day, boom, I love that. That's the Swiss Army knife function of it. So that was kind of the plus of coming in the Navy, enjoying that. The big cherry on top is the freaking brotherhood, man. Each one of those jobs I had, there was a camaraderie that came involved that I loved, that team mindset. I loved having got my guys. I loved looking over and just telling from body language what's going to happen next. That comfort level to me, I loved it. But this was also pre 9/11, and in the grand scheme of Navy SEAL cool guy status, this was a boring time to be a Navy SEAL. And let me tell you, you give guys with this skill set nothing to do, we're going to make some trouble. We're going to get into we're going to find some action somehow. Like, have you ever gone to a concert and there's always some idiot climbing up in the life rack, climbing the speaker box, or just doing something stupid? Yeah, you leave me unattended. I'm that idiot. I'm the guy who's going to be out looking for trouble and adventure if you don't give me a mission. And, my time in the teams was, I trained hard, we deployed, we got spun up, nothing happening. And I'm like, ready to go. And in between then, there was close calls of me almost doing something stupid or me doing something stupid, but getting away with it. There was a lot of that kind of mischievousness, drinking. Towards a couple of years in, you get really comfortable with your unit, your guy, you start experimenting with other substances. And so there was this feeling that I began to feel like I was a ticking time bomb. Like, if we don't really start playing ball, doing something that's what I thought the SEALs were about, I'm going to do something stupid and get in trouble. I'm going to have a DUI, or there's going to be some kind of alcohol related incident, some fight, something's going to happen. I could feel that tempo kind of going up on my insides. So when my reenlistment came up, I had to make a decision. Do I want to keep doing this, or are you going to punch out before something bad happens? And I guess my spider instinct saved me there, because I got out without any poor marks, everything honorable, good separation from the guy. And it was on, got out on a good standing. And right off the bat, there was something I noticed about that getting out in the private sector, and we're going to go into that transition piece, but that stood out to me. There was a distinct feeling about leaving the military. And, that was my military service. Not a lot of fireworks, not just shoot 'em up, bang, bang, buddy rescue, huge explosions. This was a pre 9/11 SEAL. And so that's kind of like why my story is about after the Trident, is because there's so much more that took place after that.
Okay. Well, that'll easily segue into kind of the first thing of what you want to dig into. So, as you said, you've worn many different uniforms. So what was the hardest part of transitioning out of those roles and into the civilian life?
Yeah. And the fire department, ambulance service, that was all like this leveling up, so it's going from one pool of guys into another pool of guys and being the new guy all over again. And that kind of takes care of itself. We all know how to be new guys. We all had to earn our stripes and doing all the new guy stuff, the FNG stuff. So all that stuff, in fact, in the teams, you get really good at being a new guy, because you're always going somewhere, new command, new platoon. You get really good at playing the game. So that was like this leveling up. When I'm getting out of the SEAL teams, I think this is important to realize, in America, we value our freedom, so much. It's just the bedrock of what we believe in. And I don't think most people realize that a service member gives up a great deal of freedom to serve. I mean, you sign over everything. The military controls everything of your life, your family's life, your kids' life, everything. We give up a whole lot of freedom. I mean, it's ridiculous for someone who believes so strongly in freedom, how much I surrender to be in the military. And I don't think I really felt that until I got out of the military. And all of a sudden, it was like someone took the cage off of me. And I told myself, I can do whatever I want. I am unaccounted for. And that was a powerful feeling for me. I mean, like, no one knows where I'm at. I don't have to report to anyone. And there was this, my typical response that time period was, okay, I can drink hard. I don't have to stop if I don't want to. I can do coke. I can do ecstasy. I can do whatever. And there's no urinalysis. There's no consequences that I was used to. I'm not trying to dodge and escape and evade. So there was this immediate feeling of freedom, and that I can conquer the world. I can get away with everything. I have this incredible skill set the Navy's afforded me, and I'm going to go. Let's go. And there was a lot of that going on, and this re-embracing this sense of freedom that I was kind of, you got to figure ambulance, at 18 through, for the last, was almost over a decade of being of service to my fellow man as an ambulance firefighter, Navy SEAL. I am now stepping out of, I'm not at service to anyone. So that was like this, I've never had a full taste of freedom at that point. So that transition there for me, I could say I handled it poorly. Drugs and alcohol, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Let's go out there, free agent, just going hard. There was a lot of that going on. And then 9/11 hit. Mm-hmm. Now I'm not in the service, boom, I have this huge belly full of rage. Are they going to call me back? You know, am I going to be, they're going to recall everybody. I'm kind of waiting by the phone for that. An opportunity comes up where we're sending a lot of contractors overseas to support the mission. And I was looking at that. I could use all my same skill sets, get paid a higher dollar. And this was the kicker for me. I had developed quite a liking to my drinking and my drug use. So I had a good addiction going. The contracting world seemed to fit that, you know, shorter deployments, like a 3-month contract, you know, maybe a 6-month contract, come back, party your butt off, go back over again. It seemed to fit what I wanted to do. And I don't know if you guys have, you know much about contracting. Let me share this. It's pretty much a mercenary. You know, you're not doing it for your country. You're doing it for the dollar. You're going over there in harm's way. And I took a couple of them. My first one was with the Karzai detail in Afghanistan, being President Karzai's personal bodyguard stuff. And the minute you walk out the door, there's this absence of honor. You know, when I used to go deploy in the service, I could feel the country behind me. I could feel I'm representing something. When you go over as a private contractor, no one's giving your wife a flag when you die. You know, you were going over there on your own, ass hanging out. There's no big button to press for the Marines to come. It's a very different feeling. At least this is how I was experiencing it. So I did this contracting, you know, several contracts, Afghanistan, Iraq, back and forth, back and forth. And I began to notice this things getting very strange for me coming back to the States. A lot of these PSD details, the personal security attachment details, where, you know, you're moving targets through enemy areas. And so there's a lot of roadside bombs or IEDs, a lot of stuff that you're constantly moving. You never want to stop. And the first thing I started noticing is I'd come up to a red light and the anxiety would just begin to hit me. I don't like stopping. This is back in the States. You know, a car pull up next to me and I would catch myself flinching like it's going to detonate. You know, I was noticing that and I didn't like it. So I quickly figured out a couple drinks in me before I drove. Okay, now I can fit in. And that was my first indicator that something's shifting inside of me. And that began to spread throughout my life. Like I began to feel more keyed up stateside, and that required either pills or drugs for me to turn that off to exist. But there was a third option I found to relieve this feeling. And it's called re-exposure. If I took another contract and went back over to Afghanistan or back over to Iraq, that feeling would go away, because when you're keyed up over there, it's for a reason, and it makes sense. And then, but when I come back here, I'm keyed up for no reason. I feel crazy. So I'd rather feel keyed up where it makes sense. At least there was a sense of me being at peace. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was craving that as a way to have some peace of mind, which is crazy. You know, I'll go to a war zone to find some peace. But yes, that's what I was experiencing. And so coming back to the States for me at that time means I have to get effed up to be able to function here. There's too many shades of emotion, you know, shades of gray. Over there, it's right decision, wrong decision. Live, die. It's really easy. And over here, I was not liking being a civilian. And so that was my, you know, which plays heavy into addiction. And it got worse and it got worse and worse. And my drug use got worse, you know, and so I'm going through coke, going through ecstasy, and finally ended up into the crystal meth.
Earlier, before we started, you talked about hitting rock bottom. And it sounds like that's basically where you're headed and where you ended up at that point. So maybe tell us a little bit about, if you want to talk about that, you know, the actual bottom back home, or you want to start talking about how you transitioned from that to a better life.
Gosh, you wish it's, you know, as simple as then I hit bottom.
No.
Yeah, no,
I'm sure
it's funny. You know, working with this population for the last 10 years, there's this common thread, and it is the more stubborn, the more hard-headed. You're trained never to quit. the more that gut, that power you have to push through, that all works to keep you sick. That all works to keep you from hitting a bottom. I am determined to get through this. This is the self-talk in my head. I can get through this on my own. I've been through worse. I know this is bad, but I got this. My head keeps playing these little things that have served me so well in Buds and the SEAL teams and everything I've done in the past. This little voice echo box in my head with these little mantras has given me success over here, but now it won't let me hit a bottom. The family's blown up, the work's barely hanging on. I remember trying to get another contract. And at this point, I weighed 130 pounds. I mean, right now, my fighting weight in the teams was 210, 220. That's about what I'm at now. But I weighed 130 pounds. At 6'2", I was nothing. And so they turned me down for a contract. My whole world was blowing up in different places, but I'm like, I'm going to just find a way out. I can figure this out on my own. Gosh, the hope is that you finally hit a bottom before it kills you. That willpower, that fight, you have to find a place where you're willing to say, wait a minute, maybe I don't got, maybe I need some help, to send out the distress signal. But that is so against the programming that the military gives us. The military is the basic mantra is that you handle your shit, you get yourself squared away so you can be a use to the team. You handle your shit, and that stays in us to the bitter end. So my bottom, for me, there was two parts to it. There was the realization I was an addict. That was like the aha moment. And that did not coincide with the moment of, okay, I want to change that, because for many people, they realize they're an alcoholic and they're like, F it, I don't care, and just keep drinking. I know it. But for me, there was this realization I was an addict, followed by, oh, I hate myself. And then there was a moment of me going, okay, enough is enough. I want to desperately change. The first moment for me, and to share it real quick with you guys, and this is a part where I share stuff that I am not proud of, that I used to hate myself for this. To get real and honest about what this disease takes us, that's the only way someone got to me, and I'm hoping we can get to someone else, man. When I was in the thralls of addiction, I was on a 3-day bender. I'm going hard. And this was back when the swine flu pandemic, the H1N1, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
That was hitting. That was our first big national crisis emergency. And I was on a 3-day bender, and the daycare, at the time I was married and I had a 2-year-old son, the daycare called and the message goes to voicemail. And I listened to the message and it says, there's been an exposure at the daycare facility. We're having all the parents please come and pick up your kids. Now you say that to someone who's been on a 3-day bender, they're like, oh, my son's in trouble. All right, let me just one more hit here, and I'll get there. One more hit. Maybe my wife will get him, and then my wife calls and goes to voicemail, and I listen to her message. She is upstate, out of the area. I have to get him. Okay, let me get out of here. Let me just finish up, do another hit, and for those of you who don't know, when I say do another hit, I'm smoking meth right now. Doing a hit. Let me get out of here. Okay. The daycare's calling. My wife's calling. The daycare's calling. My wife's calling. I'm trying to get out of this room for 3 hours, guys. For 3 hours, I am trying to put this motherfucking pipe down. I am trying to get out of this room. I mean, tears are coming down my eyes. My son needs me my entire life. I'm trying to be a hero, and I'm trying. I am trying. I remember looking at the pipe and looking at the phone, and I remember turning the phone off and pushing it under the bed and just using. I mean, if you could hear a spirit snap, like, I hated myself. I stopped looking in the mirror. I was so disappointed, angry, just disgusted by this guy. I knew in that moment, I was a fucking drug addict. I mean, that's what I was. This, and you know, that what you'd think that would be a bottom, but that in my mind, I was just, it was a different kind of using after that. And those struggling with addiction right now may be able to relate with this statement. You know, you've drank too much. You know, you should stop. And you're staring at the bottle of vodka, and there's maybe a quarter or a third of the bottle left. And you're looking at it, and you know you shouldn't do it. You should, and you just say F it, and you finish the bottle, not caring what happens. It's like a passive suicide, you know. It's just, I don't know what's gonna happen. You know, just kind of, that was where I was in my addiction at that point. It was just going harder and harder, just out of self-hate and disappointment. You know, a month and a half later, I was in another, you know, multi-day bender in another house. This house had multiple floors and all kinds of rooms and just shady ass people in each room. It was a flop house, you know, people arguing over there, people crazy sex shit over there, people shooting up over there. And I'm sitting in the living room, and I'm just kind of, it's like 3 a.m. I'm kind of just really in a miserable point right now. And there's these two kids in this house, 12, 13 years old, little young guys, and they have jeans on, no shirts, and they're running around with these freaking airsoft rifles, airsoft guns. You guys know the ones that shoot the little plastic pellets?
Yep.
And they're like shooting and laughing and yelling, and they have horrible weapons handling skills. They are sweeping the shit out of me with it. I'm like flinching and just getting angry with them. I get up and I go upstairs and I pass out in this pile of dirty laundry. And I'm awoken by one of those kids kicking my leg, pointing the pistol at me, saying, "Hey, freak, hey, freak." And I roll over and I look up at this kid, I look past the gun, look into this kid's eyes. The kid's eyes are like shark eyes. They're like no emotion, no innocence in his eyes. This little tiny kid has seen so much shit in his life. There's no innocence left. I'm looking at him going, oh my gosh, he has seen too much, you know? And in that moment, I could see that my son was going to grow up to be this kid. My dad died of addiction. I am on the road of dying of addiction, and my son is going to follow my footsteps. And in that moment, that's the shift there going, no. I got up, went down into the kitchen, and you guys are old enough to know back then, every single kitchen somewhere had a yellow pages, you know, the big freaking, this is what our version of the internet was, with the freaking yellow pages. You open them up and you look and scanning. I'm looking for a substance abuse treatment center, and I randomly put my finger down on one and called them. And I said, hey, I need help. And they gave me an appointment time in a bed, and I was 9 hours late getting there. I mean, because I was in a place where 51% of me knew I needed it. 49% of me still wanted to drink and use, you know. So I had reached the tipping point, and that was where my bottom began.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff, and asking for help's always going to be one of the most difficult things, especially for someone in the military.
So hard. Oh my gosh. And it's weird. I didn't do it. You know, it still wasn't, I got to save myself. It was my son. I got to do it for my son. There was something else had to trigger it. You know, I still hated myself, what I'd become. Yeah. Crazy.
So kind of looking at some things here too. So I guess you've been sober for about 15 years now.
Knock on wood, 15 years.
That's a huge thing.
Congratulations.
So congrats and kudos for that. Big. What was the biggest lesson that recovery has taught you?
Biggest lesson recovery's taught me. Oh my gosh. It's funny. You know, you think you have all these plans and how the way your life needs to work out, you know, and in my wildest dreams, never growing up my whole life would I ever have conceived me being a therapist, you know, me working as a social worker. I mean, even saying it, I would be like cringing, like, what? I mean, there was zero interest, zero, like it looked like a horrible job. It came down to me not knowing myself, you know, and when I went through recovery and I ended up like working with other veterans and working with other people in recovery, I got to this place where, whoa, this being authentic with another human being, sharing, I actually, I get something out of it. Some growth occurs. And so when I went back to school, I mean, there was this calling towards like, I wanted to do in that treatment center, there was a therapist who got through to me. And this is what stood out. He brought a cup of coffee with him to work that day. My whole life, it was kit bags and M4s and turnouts and all this gear I've been using to go save the day. That guy brought a cup of coffee and freaking helped save me from that's the most authentic form of being a hero there was. And so there was this understanding of me is what recovery has brought me. This like I didn't really know myself enough to know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So there was this it's like peeling back the onion of self-discovery, and you're getting to this core, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's who I am. And then nurturing and taking care of him and helping him grow. I guess to answer your question is this: I had this preconceived notion of what I thought my life should be, and it was recovery took this path of self-discovery that led me to, oh, this is what I am.
So as a therapist, then, and if you want to talk about your education at some point, you can add that as well. But how do you now approach veterans who might be resistant to talking about mental health?
Whew, that's a good one, because
a lot of those.
There's a lot of those. So, and my road to education, I got about a year and a half under my belt, sobriety, and I discovered I wanted to help people. I actually maybe wanted to be a therapist. And it was hard for me even to say it out loud at first. And so I went back to school and I got my associates at a 2-year college here locally, TCC, and then transferred to Old Dominion University and got my undergraduate in human services. Stayed on and got my master's in counseling. And from there, at my 5-year mark, went back to that same treatment center and asked for a job. Like 5 years from the date of checking in, I came back and said, hey, thank you guys for saving my life. Can I work here and help you? And they said, absolutely, come on board. And so in that time working with them, I got to be the go-to guy for working with veterans, law enforcement, first responders as they came in. And I quickly, realized, even from my own experience, that you need to handle these guys differently. You can't just throw them in with everyone else. It's not the same. We're not programmed. In fact, they take military people and they send us away to this, for lack of a better term, a processing camp, a concentration camp called boot camp, where they program us to be service members, and they expect us to be able to function in the military, out in the civilian world with this programming still embedded in us. So they needed to be handled differently going through treatment. And so during my time there at the Farley Centers where we were working, I was learning and working with and trying to educate the facility on how we can handle these guys better. And that led to me going back to school, get my PhD. I did my dissertation, what interventions work best with veterans. And, a lot was uncovered. And from that, I was able to put together a special veterans-only treatment program for the Farley Center, a whole pipeline. I wrote the curriculum for that, got the group going, and that's up and thriving now. But there was a lot of lessons learned for these guys that they need to be handled differently because their defenses are so high. And I'll give you a visual. This is how I describe it to people. Inside my head as a veteran, and this could be law enforcement, this could be first responders. Inside my head, when you say hi to me on the street, I'm like, how you doing? I don't literally have my dukes up. Like right now I have my fists up like I'm gonna have a fight, but inside my head, my defenses are up. And we start talking to each other. Yeah, things are great. My defenses are up. I'm squared off to you. I am ready for you to take a shot. When you begin to work with a veteran and you begin to get to them, they have to get to a place where their arms start dropping, start lowering, start going down to their sides. And I'm standing here with my arms outstretched forward, and I look uncomfortable. I look like I am vulnerable. This is not comfortable. I want to be back up here. This is where I want to be. This is a hard place to be, but that's where the work gets done. And to get that process the dropping, the lowering of the guard requires them to trust you. And veterans, unless you've gone to the line with them, you train with them, you've worked with them, you've signed on the dotted line with them, they're not going to give you that trust that easily.
So that kind of goes along here of kind of what in our notes where you said, sharing personal stories is often more powerful than sharing facts or data. That seems like because you can relate to them on a certain level. Because a lot of normal people might not be able to empathize as much with a veteran, because especially one that's been deployed, because they haven't seen some of the stuff that we have. They haven't been in that high alert state that we have. So yeah, I can definitely see why in those terms, personal experiences is how you can get to that level with them. Say, hey, I've been through some stuff. I've been through what you've experienced. Let me help.
In today's charged political atmosphere, the different attitudes towards the military, towards law enforcement, there's all these different. If you throw me in an anonymous group together with other people, I don't know if you're friend or foe. I don't know if you can handle what I have to share. It might blow your mind, So there's going to be a long time that has to elapse before we get to a place in that group that I think everyone in this room can handle what I'm about to share. You put me in the room with the group of veterans who've been deployed to Afghanistan, and all of a sudden we have this shared knowledge base we're working with, and there's this process of you show me yours, I'll show you mine. Boom, we quickly get to a place now we're talking about similar issues. So there's a lot to be said of taking advantage of those shared experiences.
So you then opened up your own business with a partner. It's called Bishop and Dice Defense. Can you tell us something about that and what makes the model different? I'd like to hear about it.
All right. It's kind of a bait and switch. Bishop and Dice Defense. Scott Bishop and myself opened this company almost over 3 years ago. And what our whole game plan is, we will roll into your VA, your Veterans Affairs, the police department, the fire department. We'll roll in, we'll talk to your guys, talk to your chief, we'll talk shop, we'll get your uniform supplies, we'll get your tactics, we'll get you training, all the latest gear coming in. We'll talk shop for like a whole year. We're out there working with you until you know us and trust us. And on year 2, we bring in mental health services. We'll have online groups. We'll preserve the anonymity. We'll begin to allow you to trust us with the bigger issues. And so it's that tag team that we go in with, because everyone likes to talk about toys. Everyone likes to talk about stories and shoot the shit with you for a whole year until you gain our trust. And then we'll bring in the more needed. And what, our true mission is, defense of the mind, body, and soul. We're going to get you there. And so that's our game plan, and that's been serving us well. We're in 7 states now. We're getting out there. We're knocking on doors, and we're hopefully saving lives.
So kind of curious about that too, because you said for the first year you build you build that trust. You learn about them, you talk to them, you let them get to know you, and then you bring in the mental health thing. How do you kind of brace them for that? I suppose because you don't want someone to be like, oh yeah, this guy's cool. I've been talking to him for a year. And then all of a sudden, they're bringing in doctors. Like, what's this? Like, how do you break past that kind of a thing to say, hey,
good call.
This is part of that.
Well, first, it's very simple. I'm there. I'm showing up. I'm sharing my story with him through the year, my experiences, talking about other cases, other VAs I've worked with. I'm giving lots of living examples of what this whole system works like. The second year in, the cracking the door is like, listen, guys, any of you guys have any questions? We have an anonymous online group where you can log in, and I don't care if you use your real name or not, but you can log in and you can just ask general questions to the group about, hey, is this something I should be concerned about? Or if I say this about myself, does it automatically trigger someone pulling the red alarm and I get taken off the line? Or what does treatment look like? What does inpatient look like? What does outpatient look? All these questions they may have, or like, am I in trouble? Because I feel like I might be able to still have a grip on this, but maybe I'm just in denial. All these kind of questions, that's what the group's for. You get them to just get in the door, start asking questions. So I'm working with them personally in these groups. They're in a group with other fire and rescue, other law enforcement people who've come in anonymously. And we're just having this open discussion about, hey, is what I'm feeling should I be concerned about? And if so, what options are available? So that's the way to break the ice. They're not committing, they're not notifying their command, they're merely asking questions.
All right. Can you share a anonymously, of course, do you have
Sure.
any like success story of any particular event that's really meaningful?
Yeah, I could, Joe. We'll, to keep anonymity, we can talk about Joe. Um, Joe was wondering if he had a problem, and he logged into our anonymous group. He started sharing with the group. He was just, and for a couple of weeks, he was just, hey guys, appreciate being here. And he was kind of closed off. He didn't share that much, but he did share that he's having some trouble with the missus. He had gotten out of the military. He had found a civilian job, and he was drinking more than he was. And that was the riff with his wife, is that the alcohol had kind of, like, whenever she saw him, he was been drinking. He got off work, and all of a sudden his drinking was getting longer the whole weekends, and he was wondering if it's going to be a problem. He ended up getting a DUI, and so this was like, whew, and the riff at home had gotten worse, and all of a sudden, and this happens a lot, he shares with us the wife has moved out with the kids. Now, our version of what our understanding was, that he was having some small issues with the wife. That we all know right away. Well, he doesn't move out from small issues. This is clearly something that's been growing for a while. Some big things have happened, and boom. So now his home life's blown up. He's now had his DUI, and we're talking to him like, okay, hey, don't make it worse. Don't make it worse. Maybe we should look at the drinking a little harder. You'd think that would be a bottom for him, and it wasn't. And for many of us, that's, the family could be a bottom. It could be an emotional bottom. You could have a financial bottom. This was having some legal consequences, and we were hoping that would be the bottom. He gets a court date, of course, and he gets a DUI on the way to the court date, which,
Wow.
one thing about addicts and alcoholics, we can always make it worse. There's always another trap door. And if you think you're at the bottom, you keep drinking, you can find another one. So now this is complicating everything. We're losing a job now. And he is hitting a place now that he wants to toy with the idea that maybe it's the alcohol. And we recommend a treatment center, and now it's court ordered. So he goes in the treatment center, and we're watching him kind of come to grips with not just the drinking, but all the different parts of his life that's tied to this understanding of, wow, I'm a worse dad because of this. Obviously I'm losing my kids. I am a worse worker. I am a worse friend. I'm a worse, it's just this opening up of his eyes of how many parts of his life are affected. And then there's this transition as he goes through treatment and gets out, and he starts working a program of recovery, where he sits down with someone else in recovery and begins to talk about his whole life. He starts from the beginning, as far back as you remember, and he starts sharing all the patterns of behavior. And we're in group kind of watching this unfold. And he's really talking about how, wow, there's so much in common I have with both the people in the group who are sharing, like, we've done the same stupid decisions. We've all had problems with authority. We have all these common traits, like just different details. And he's getting this place where you can see him beginning to have almost like empathy for himself. Like, whoa, I have been through all of this. It's almost like he's beginning to care about his own story again. And that process shifts with him, and it's just literally like, wow. Remember, he got to a point where he couldn't stand himself, and now he's finally kind of like, okay, I can understand why I made those decisions. God, this poor guy. And he starts taking care of himself. And so this next kind of process he starts working on his behaviors, like going to gym, eating right, trying to tell the truth, trying not to manipulate conversations, all these little processes. He's really trying hard at this because he wants better for himself. He gives a shit again, and we're seeing him work on that for the next couple of months. So now he's about 9 months out of treatment. and he starts, really owning his shit, the stuff he's done. He's trying to, they say make things right, make amends. He's going out there repaying debt. He's talking to his wife who wants to leave him, and there's this different man standing before her, someone who's talking differently, not trying to manipulate the conversation, who's owning his mistakes. He's trying to, do the next right thing. The last year of us working with him, we're seeing him entering this phase of, he's like accountable. He calls his sponsor every day. He has this daily accountability built into his life. He's like, he started going back to church again, which blew him mind because he never even talked about being religious at all at the beginning. But as it turns out, years ago, he had found his way back to church, and at the same time, he started working with another alcoholic that had just started the road to recovery. So in the space of this whole, a year, maybe 14 months of us working with him, we've watched him work through this process of realizing he was in trouble, owning his life, his story, changing his behaviors, making things right, and finding a purpose, helping others. He went back to school. He's working on becoming a therapist now. He's found a new mission.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, when those things play out in front of us, people who ask me, I don't understand. You used to be a Navy SEAL. How are you finding satisfaction in being a therapist? I share with them, you don't understand the life drama that unfolds in my world every day. Seeing people who have lost literally everything in their life claw their way back and find a new way to live that helps a significantly more people than they ever could have before. There's a lot of drama and excitement in my life right now. I mean, you would not believe what a therapist experiences, not just witnesses, experiences with their patients.
That's a really good success story. That's really cool to see, to hear that happen. And it gives hope, to those who might also be, showing it's like, hey, these people can do it. Maybe I can too. So
dude, that's the kicker right there, man.
People get wind of that.
Yeah.
But kind of going a little bit on that, you have an upcoming autobiography coming out.
I do.
That it isn't like a shoot 'em up Navy SEAL memoir. What story are you really trying to tell with it?
I know. I mean, people. There's a whole genre out there in Navy SEALs writing books and all this stuff, and I want to put the little warning label. This is not the bang bang shoot 'em up explosions going. I mean, there are crazy stories in here, but the book is called After the Trident: A Navy SEAL's Battle with Secret Shame and Addiction. What I have learned, and I actually heard this from Steven Spielberg in an interview once. He said, you can argue facts and statistics all day long, and you will never change someone's mind. But if you share a story with them, you have a chance of changing their perspective, offering a different perspective. And that hit home to me because when I get honest, and that's what I did in this book, I got brutally honest about the good, the bad, the ugly. I looked really good on paper. Like your introduction today was, whoa, this guy sounds awesome. Behind the scenes, all the mind games, all the secrets, all the getting away with it. If you really knew me, you'd get the fuck away. It was a crazy life. And so I got honest about all of that, put it on paper, fought with the publicist, please print this. And they're like, if you print that, you're going to go to jail, or you print that, you're going to get sued. Fought with them about all these stories, trying to get them to leave it in because, listen, the road of an addict alcoholic is a crazy one. And we don't share anything with anyone. We keep it all a secret, all the stuff we don't like about ourselves, but we hold it and we carry it and we think that we're just pieces of shit. You're going to read this book and you're going to go, oh my gosh, I did that. Oh, I know what that's like. You're going to have cringe moments like, oh, I know exactly what he's going through right here. When I hear someone's story and I can identify in, that helps me better understand what's going on inside here. I'm offering you a perspective, not just like a look into my life, but for you to say, oh, maybe there's a way out of this for me. and it might not be what I think. So the book captures that. It's my story. It also captures, and I didn't discover this, there's a lot of 12-step recovery programs out there. I think there's over 220 different programs that all follow the 12-step model. I, in my journey through academia, discovered or brushed away the dust and kind of the bones of these programs, the theoretical model found underneath. It's stages of change followed by narrative therapy, CBT followed by existential. I brushed that out and I outlaid it into my story to allow you to follow along like, hey, it's not hocus pocus how these 12-step programs are working. There's actually some proven theory that backs it up to give you an understanding of what that road through recovery might look like and make sense of it. Because, for you to get into a recovery program, you're going to have to like take the leap of faith. Like I want to do whatever it takes to get better. Just tell me where to jump. I want you to have a better understanding of what that landing pad looks like.
And so how does writing and speaking publicly help you with your own recovery?
How does talking with you help me? Okay.
Sure.
I mean, listen, there was a time where I could not look at myself in the mirror. I would cringe when I thought about what I did. And I for sure was not going to share it with you. In recovery, we begin to learn that our real world experience, our lived experiences of life is our greatest asset when I share it with someone else. Because I'm hoping that my story helps you change your story. Back when recovery started, everyone's goal was to raise the bottom for the next generation. I don't want you to have to lose the house, the dog, the car, and the job. Maybe just you'll lose the house, the dog, and the job. And the next generation, maybe just the house and the dog. You're trying to raise the bottom. So by helping me, that stuff I used to beat myself up over, by me sharing it and being honest with you, I'm hoping that by helping you, it gives value, and it becomes it's something I stop whipping my back over it, and I use it as a guidepost for others. It's something that we use for good rather than just beating the crap out of myself for it. So it's that, just freaking be honest, share it. And if it does help one person, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
For those listening who want to connect, what's the best way to, follow your work or your book launch or anything like that?
All right. So my last name's Dice, and my whole life, that's a fun name for other kids to make fun of you. Everyone gives you dice paraphernalia for Christmas. Everyone gives you the little fluffy dice hanging from the mirrors. So my whole life I've dealt with this last name. I got my PhD, and now I'm Dr. Dice. A good side effect of that, if you want to find me on social media, Google Dr. Dice, Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias. You'll find me up there. You'll click the links. You can find, and get this, to write my book, I recorded 78 videos of what stories I've been through. And then I merely wrote the stories as I spoke them, just typed it out. And then once I started arguing with the publisher about what can and can't be printed, I just said, screw it. I'm going to post the videos on YouTube, and my listeners can kind of follow along as I write the book and see the actual videos. So go to YouTube channel, go to my social media channels, or if you want to bypass all of that, go to www.drdicebook.com, and boom, you'll be signed up on the mailing list. You get first shot of the book, background information, hidden videos, all the fun stuff.
Cool. That's great. All right. So as we're nearing the end of this, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to add?
Haven't talked about that I'd like to add. Oh, let's see. If someone out there is hurting right now, someone out there is going through some stuff. And what I want to share with you, remember when they made seatbelts a law? You guys remember that? Before, you didn't have to wear a seatbelt. Now you do. When they first passed that law, I refused to put my seatbelt on. No, you can't tell me what to do. I'm not going to put it on. I was against it. Absolutely not going to go along with it, out of principle. And I stood on that. It wasn't until I began to realize that if I got in an accident and I was hurt, I couldn't help my kids, my wife, my brothers, my sisters. I couldn't be the hero. I couldn't be of use if I was injured. It's funny. That's what inspired me to put the seatbelt on, because I could help someone else. There is a powerful instinct inside the veteran, law enforcement, first responder, the instinct to be there for someone else. That definitely supersedes me looking out for my own well-being. Like, I will go to any length to save your ass, but I'm not going to eat healthy. It's that kind of duality that exists. So if you're out there hurting and you are going through some stuff and you're in trouble, just for a second and realize that if you want to be there for someone else, for your kid, for your wife, for your buddy, you need to get your shit straight. You need to get the help you need so you can be strong again and be there. So if you don't want to do it for yourself right now, that's okay. Freaking get in there, get healthy, get the help you need for your kid, for your wife. They say anything can get you into recovery. You just got to stay for yourself for the right reasons. But that first leap, it might take, like it did for me. I can't be there for my son if I'm not alive. I need to get help. So hey, someone out there listening, that first step is you reaching out.
All right. And we'd like to ask one last question. If you could give one piece of advice to a veteran who feels completely lost right now, what would it be?
What? I mean, it would be that. It would be like, listen, put your seatbelt on. You need to get it. Listen, anybody who's ever asked themselves, I wonder if I'm an alcoholic. Normal people don't ask that question about themselves. It's just not something normies ask. So if you're already questioning, if they're saying there's something, your wife's not happy, believe it or not, usually the last people to know that anything's wrong is work, because you put all your effort at preserving the work identity. That's where the money comes in. That's the last one to give you an indicator. Mm-hmm. The family suffers, the social life suffers, your physical life suffers. All those areas will suffer first before that light bulb goes off. So just by saying I've never had an alcohol related incident at work does not mean you're not in trouble. The barometer starts at home. Is the wife happy? Is the kids happy? Are you happy? Mm-hmm. Yes. So if the check engine light's on, don't hit the bottom I did. Don't wait till everything in the world's blown up. Yeah. Reach out, give someone a call, read my book.
There you go. It's good advice for anybody out there. And we just want to say, thank you very much, Dr. Dice, for coming on the show here and, chatting with us, chatting with the people. And
sure, man. Doing some good, man.
Helping to get the word out there. That's what we do. That's why we do this, is to let people know there is help out there. Everyone's going through their own things, but there's people out there that can relate for you.
Thanks, Chris.
So really appreciate your time, and for everybody tuning in, appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch us, to listen. If you like what you're hearing, what you're seeing, hit like, subscribe, follow, spread the word out there. If you know somebody who needs the help, please, by all means, get this out to them. Let's get this train rolling, because there are people out there, and we want to try and touch as many people as we can.
Yeah,
that's a good deal, man.
All right. Yeah. So thanks for being on. I appreciate it. And everyone else, we will see you next time.
Next time.
Thanks, Tom, Chris. Take care.
Thanks.